to have English special lectures in additional normal lectures. He has already had one-day lectures today, so he might be very tired, but he has very kindly give us English additional special lectures today. Okay? And also I'm very appreciative for Professor Shiraiwa, who is coordinator of general classes for the graduate school, to have a chance for, especially for the EDL students, additional English lectures regarding on global environmental issues and Japan policy. And thank you very much again, Ambassador Horie and Professor Shiraiwa. And briefly, I would like to introduce career Ambassador Masahiko Horie. And Mr. Horie graduated from Osaka University and entered Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1973. And also he has studied École Nationale d'Administration in France, 1975. And he got experience envoy in Kenya, 1992, and envoy in France, 1998, an ambassador in Qatar, 2004, an ambassador in Malaysia, 2007, and ambassador for global environmental affairs since 2011. So today we are very looking for a very exciting lectures regarding on again global environmental issues and Japan policy. And again, ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Mr. Horie, please.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my friends. Who among you attended this morning session? Stand up.
About today's morning session?
Yes.
In today's morning session, we around the 10 participants made a presentation about what they learned in the lecture in this May, and they present about some problems and some solution to the future and some image for the futures. And then finally, Mr. Horie gave us some comments, and also we gave some presenters comments.
Good. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Yada, I'm sorry. With your big misunderstanding, you missed a lot. And this morning session was very interesting. And that was very stimulus and a very good presentation one after another. And I missed your presentation on games theory. Your application of game theory to the climate change. So you have to come back again, maybe next year. So who else? Who else did I meet last time in May? Only Yada? That's the only person? So all the rest, for the first time? Okay, can you introduce yourself?
Me?
Yes.
I'm Rajiv Singh from Nepal, and I'm second year student. I'm second year student at Life and Environmental Science, and my major, I'm doing research on waste management. So my focus is on organic waste.
Good.
And I'm trying to study the overall condition of waste management in my city, as well as I'm from Nepal, so as well as my whole country and city. And I'm trying to come up with a scenario. I'm making different scenarios. So I'm trying to come up with an appropriate scenario which can be followed to manage the waste in my capital city, Kathmandu.
Very good. Yeah. That waste management is one of the most important problem of the world. And very interesting.
And
I wanted you to make your presentation this morning related to the climate change, this waste management. But thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Michael. I'm from Eritrea, East Africa, and I came last year to Japan, and I'm studying Master 1 in master's first year in Department of Environmental Sciences and also EDL. And this year in summer, I went to Kenya for EDL internship, and it was my first experience to go to another African country.
Great. Thank you, thank you. I visited Nepal, I worked in Kenya, and I visited the Mogadishu and so on. But Eritrea, I have to go next time.
Please do.
Yes. I think I met you before.
I didn't know.
No? I see.
Okay, my name is Sakti Isi, and I'm also from Nepal.
Hmm.
And I was a student of this university, and Tsukuba sensei also
I see.
teacher. But now I already finished my PhD,
Hmm.
and now I'm working at NIED as a researcher.
Which one?
NIED, National Research Institute for Earth Science and
I see. Congratulations. Good, good. Thank you.
And my field is basically radar hydrology.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm working on nowcasting of precipitation.
Good. Thank you. I'd like to continue this, but my time is limited. If I continue this and longer, then after your presentation, self-introduction, thank you, Professor Sujimura. That's the end of this course. So maybe sorry to cut short. Okay, go ahead. Whoever. Stand up, stand up.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hong. I'm from Vietnam. Now I study the second year master in Vietnam National University. So I had a good chance to become an exchange student in Tsukuba Center from October to next month. My major is soil environment, and I'm interested in agriculture. My research is study on the capability of the biota application to improve irrigation and review in my country.
Good, thank you very much. My Japanese friends, Japanese student here, everyone speaks so long. Okay? And everybody are very, very positive in expressing what they are doing and self-introduction, even that part. And you have to be as good as them. That is one of the most important points of this EDL. Okay? So, here, lady from Muslim country.
Good evening. My name is Nur Adila. I'm from Malaysia. I'm here for exchange program for 6 months. I just came here last week.
I see. Do you see me for the first time?
Yeah, first time.
First time. Then I doubt if you are Malaysian or not. I thought all the Malaysian students or all the Malaysian people know me. This is the first person who doesn't know me. Nice meeting you now. Okay. So, another lady from Islam country. Maybe you just came in. Good. Self-introduction. Brief one. From Malaysia too?
No, I'm from Indonesia.
Indonesia, good.
My name is Iriani. I'm from Bogor Agricultural University. This is my first time in Tsukuba.
Good, thank you. And stay for how long?
6 months.
Good, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yelena and I come from Latvia. Latvia.
Latvia.
Okay, yes, Europe. And I am master's first year. I am an EDL student and I would like to do research which is related to forest management in my country.
Good, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm from Vietnam. I am an exchange student, and I'm here when coming down to learn in Tsukuba. I am interested in marine system, and I hope I will participate in Japan.
Good, thank you. And I want the Japanese students here try to make friends with these foreign students. And that's another important point. And you make friends at least before you leave here this afternoon after my lecture. Try to make at least one foreign students. Okay?
Right.
You try to introduce to, you are from
China.
China. To her, that's very easy. And you take her name, her email, if she agrees. And you give your name and email address to her. Okay? And try to tell what you are studying. And try to ask her what she is studying. Okay? And by that is already a research exchange. And that is very important, and as many friends as possible. And it very often happens, you are studying in the same classroom, but never try to introduce yourself to your next door friend. Right?
Yes.
And that is no good. Japan is too homogeneous. Living within Japan, speaking only in Japanese, and without associating with any other coming from abroad. You don't need to go to Malaysia. You can make friends with her. And you ask her what kind of country Malaysia is like. You know? And you explain and so on. Then you can brush up your English and to know the Eritrea is what kind of country and Nepal is what kind of country and so on and so on. And that is most important, okay? So today, everyone has to raise hands and speak out. So without raising hand and speak out, you cannot leave here. Global issues. What is this? What is global issues? No one raise hands. This is no good. Any answer is okay. Anything you can think of is alright. Raise hand first. Everyone raise hand. Everyone raise hand. Hands down. Raise again. Hands down. You need exercise. Okay? Alright. Tell me, what is global issues? Lady, first.
I think that global issues are the issues which are interrelated between the countries and which we share.
Right. So, what are the global issues? Examples. What do you think are the problems? Introduce yourself, your name and the country you are from.
I'm Masahiko. I'm from Indonesia, from the University of Gajah Mada.
Gajah Mada. Yes. Gajah Mada is, by the way, the best university in Indonesia.
Maybe now, but I don't know.
Okay, great. Yes.
Okay, climate change.
Climate change. Oh, you know it very well. Bingo. What else?
Introduce myself.
No. Global issues.
Population is like one.
Population.
One of the global
Correct. Yes. Okay. Yes.
I need to introduce.
Your name.
Water.
Water. Right. Because you are attending this morning and you made your presentation. I have forgotten your name, but yes. Saying something.
Poverty.
Poverty. That's right. What else?
Woman empowerment.
Yes. Ranjit, say you can write. Yes. Yes.
Air pollution.
Air pollution. Yes. Introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Charity and I come from Indonesia.
Indonesia.
I think the global issues is war and peace. War and peace.
World? World peace.
Yes.
Big issue. We say world peace
War.
and
War.
war. World war.
The real war and peace.
We say world peace and security. Food.
Starvation.
Hmm?
Starvation.
Starvation.
Disease. Disease.
Disease.
Disease.
Health.
Did I meet you this morning?
No.
Introduce?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yang Wei from China. Thank you. My name is Yang Wei from China.
China. Yada-san, second time.
Finance.
Finance.
Yeah, or like economic stuff.
Economic problem, ne? Saying?
Human trafficking.
Human trafficking. Editorial?
Migration.
Migration, that's right.
Child labor. Child labor.
Child
Child labor. Child labor.
Child labor.
Child labor.
Child labor. Child labor. Child labor, ne? Yes. Introduce.
My name is Horie from the University and Tsukuba Sensei is Masahiko.
Indonesia.
Sediment disaster.
Sediment disaster. Sediment in this case, what does it mean?
Soil and
Sediment disaster. I see.
so probably soil and water related disaster.
Yes.
My name is Shahrul from Indonesia.
Indonesia. Oh, so many Indonesians. Who are from Malaysia? One. Only one who didn't know me.
The problem is maybe oil and gas.
Oil and gas, energy. Energy. Yes. So many. It continues on and on and on. Which means what? We embrace so many problems, so many issues, which has to be solved internationally, and which has to be tackled by everyone of the world, by every country, nation of the world. And these are some of the problems which we have to attack and tackle. And no, each one country isolated cannot do anything. That's why these are global issues. And most of them, or I would say all of them, has been tackled by the international institutions, namely United Nations and specialized agencies, right? And this climate change, and also big problem of environment, conservation of biodiversity, and what else? The world peace and security, linked with it, the democracy, or governance. And these are a kind of that one. There are also nuclear problem, disarmament issue, that we have to do, both of them, for the survival of the human beings. And also these problems, population migration and women empowerment and economic pollution, human trafficking, all these pollution, poverty. This poverty is one of the very important and major issues of the world, because we have billions of people who are still living under $1 subsistence per day. And so many people are still living in poverty. China rising, big country. And China is really embracing a lot of not only Chinese companies, but also Japanese companies, European companies, American companies, everybody's going there. China has become a kind of production hub of the world. And its economy has been growing a lot. But Chinese interior problem is this poor and the rich. As the economy progresses, as China becomes the middle income country, little by little, you are or they are having a little big problem, poverty, domestic poverty problem, rich and poor. And not only China, but also many other countries, particularly in the developing countries, developing world, this problem is poverty is very important. And who said climate change? Yes, this is bingo, ne? This is very important in the sense that the globe itself is really having this climate change, global warming problem. Just a week before, what happened? Friday last week. Does anyone know? That is IPCC, International Panel on Climate Change, made the fifth proposal on the climate change. And I think everybody has, I don't know, this paper. And on the first page, it's written in Japanese, but the figures are in letters. So you can see, this is the, during the last 100 years, the world temperature has been risen by 0.74, right? And what IPCC reported just a week ago, this level has been increased furthermore. And also, the world is really degrading, the world weather is getting worse and worse. And even in Tsukuba, there are tornadoes or tatsumaki happening these days. And during the summer, Japanese summer is much worse than Malaysian summer. I came back from Malaysia just a week ago. Malaysia was wonderful. Tropical country, but much cooler than Japan. Since a week ago, Japan has become normality, but still very, very hot during this summer, unbearable. So I'm telling to all my Malaysian friends, don't come to Japan during August or July or summertime, right? Because you will be meeting with the unbearable summer. Even Malaysians cannot believe it. And the number, according to the WHO, this second page on the first page is showing how many days of heat wave has been attacking Japan or the world, everywhere on the globe. And it's really happening more and more serious. Nonetheless, the interest or concern about the people of the world may not be increasing, and it's been decreasing maybe. It depends on where of the globe. But generally speaking, at least in Japan, or not only in Japan. For instance, we were talking about this morning Kyoto Protocol. What is Kyoto Protocol, by the way? Editorial-san, have you heard of Kyoto Protocol?
Yes,
What is it?
it's an agreement which was signed in 1997 and regarding climate change. And that was the proceeding of the Earth Summit, and that marked an important agreement whereby large number of countries signed for the protection of climate change and reduction in carbon dioxide emission.
That's right. Well, he knows very well. Were you the professor of climate change in Editorial?
I was teaching in a college. I was teaching
yeah.
children.
My guess is correct. Yeah. So otherwise, no one can respond that well. Right? But Kyoto Protocol, that is protocol in Japanese Giteisho, which is under what? Under the Convention of Climate Change, right? That is UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which means we agreed upon worldwide framework agreement, United Nations Framework Agreement on Climate Change. Framework agreement is something above, which covers very, very large field, framework, and more in detail, and more important thing will be decided within the protocol. Under UNFCCC, this Kyoto Protocol was formulated. This Kyoto Protocol is very, very epoch-making. Why was it epoch-making? Those who attended this morning studied in May, and this morning too, who raised hand and explained what was most epoch-making thing about Kyoto Protocol? You need exercise again? Huh? Try.
Kyoto Protocol is is a historically first time to which is decided under the low and low
Decrease CO2.
yeah decreasing CO2 and under the rules internationally.
Yes. The epoch-making thing about Kyoto Protocol is those parties, members who agreed upon numerical target, the numerical target of CO2 reduction. Japan was how much? Yes, -6. Japan, -6%. USA?
-7.
Yes, -7%. EU? 8%. UNFCCC, everybody agreed upon that globe is having big challenge of global warming. And if we leave it as it is, the globe will become too hot, too warm, and there will be a lot of flooding, there will be tornadoes and typhoons, a lot of disasters, and the desertification effect happening in African continent, or many flooding will be taking place in any other places, which is really happening, and heat wave and so on. And because of the warming, what happens? The glacier of the North Pole, South Pole, and the continent will be melting down, And by melting down, the sea level will be increased little by little, but today 20 centimeters, and then by the end of this century, maybe 40 centimeters, 50 centimeters. These are, whether you think it's a lot or small, it is relative. But in fact, this is very much. And as it advances, and little by little, the sea level goes up, what happens?
Coastal cities are flooded.
That's right. So, coastal cities or small island countries like Kiribati, Nauru, Samoa, and so on, in many in South Pacific, Polynesian, Micronesian, all these countries or small island countries, we say AOSIS, alliance of small island countries, their land will be sinking below the sea. In other words, country will be reducing little by little, or very much. And by the end of this year, I have not calculated, some of the lowest flat island might be disappearing, very much so. Country's three elements are what? In order to have a nation, what are the three elements? That is?
People.
Huh?
People.
Huh?
People.
People, that's right. People has to be there. And?
Land.
That's right. Land has to be there. And government or sovereignty. These are the three basic elements of having a nation. There has to be the people who is living, there has to be the land where they can live, and the government they can govern. These three things are, if one element will be disappearing, the country cannot exist. This land is little by little, but very much, will be under the sea. Do you think this country can be a country? No. Submerging under the sea, people cannot live. So, for instance, when Nauru will be under the sea, what do these people now do? They have to migrate. Yeah? Migrate to where? It's very difficult that any country to welcome. Many Syrian refugees are going out of the country because of the turmoil to Jordan, to the Turkey or neighboring countries of Syria. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are unfortunately had to leave. These countries, by climate change, they have to move out somewhere, I don't know. If some country offer them some land, that land will be temporarily or provisionally lived by Nauru government and the people, and maybe Nauru government will be housed by that country. That could be theoretically possible, but in reality, that would be very difficult. Something like the Palestinians and Israeli problem might happen. But anyway, this climate change devastating effects here and there, and that is very, very serious. But nonetheless, people are not so much attentive or so much concerned. Of course, there are people who are very much concerned with it. There are NGOs, there are governments who are very, very seriously taking it seriously. But nonetheless, it may not be good enough in order to tackle this one. But anyway, in Kyoto, we have agreed upon Kyoto Protocol, and not only Japan, USA, and EU, many other countries have agreed upon. Numerically, they are legally bound to reduce CO2 emissions. during the 5 years time, starting 1918 to last year, 2013, 2008, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 9. This first 5 years, that is the first commitment period. And first period during these 5 years, Japan agreed to reduce 6% each year, at least. So cumulatively, 5 years time, reducing that one. Never in the world history, there was no agreement, the reduction of CO2s legally bound by, so this is the first time that word agreed upon. But when it was decided, early 90s, this KP, Kyoto Protocol, was covering as many countries which share is almost 60% of the world global CO2 emissions. CO2 emissions, and if you can see this handout, second page, this is the figure of the 1990. And this blue plus red one, that is all the countries which agreed on in Kyoto to be bound by Kyoto Protocol. But the USA, she signed it in Kyoto and bring it back home and present it to the Capitol Hill, the Parliament. And Parliament refused it. Parliament didn't agree. So even though administration agreed upon, which has been cancelled by the legislative power. Therefore, USA is written here in red, and USA out. And today, after 20 years, 30 years, 20 years later, those who are bound, still bound by Kyoto Protocol, their share is only 1/4, 25%. It's been shrinked from 60% to 25%. This is the reason why Japan started to say that we have to think about, we have to formulate new framework where all the government, not only this 1/4 of the countries, but also the rest, 3/4 of the countries will be joining. In other words, USA has to join, and China, India, Brazil, South Africa, these emerging economies, these more advanced among the developed countries, which are today big emitters. For instance, China today, only China shares 25% of the world global emission because China has become the world factory. So that's naturally they are emitting the largest emitters of the world. So we are saying China has to join, India has to join, USA, who cancelled, has to join, and every one of the United Nations members countries has to join to the new framework away from Kyoto Protocol. So that is what we have, what shall I say, appealed to the world, and particularly COP16, COP17, and COP17 in South Africa, in Durban. Everybody agreed. Everybody means USA, China, India. They all agreed to formulate a new framework where all the state parties will become a member. In other words, global issue, this climate change, only 1/4 of the world tackling? No. everyone has to share the responsibility. But this share of responsibility is very difficult point when we think about how to balance this responsibility. We have been talking about what? What did we discuss? Yes?
CBDR.
CBDR. Editorial friend, what does it mean?
CBDR.
Okay, you didn't talk about CBDR. Who else? Have you heard of this CBDR? No? C, not YMCA. What is CBDR?
Common, but differentiated responsibility.
So this is common but differentiated responsibility, which means even China and India agrees. Yes, that is common responsibility. Common means shared by all. Even Nepal, even Eritrea, even Vietnam. All common responsibility because global issue. Not only Japan, but also all the bad effects goes into every nook and cranny of this globe, right? So everybody shares in order to tackle with this climate change, but it has to be differentiated responsibility. How and why? Why differentiated? Basic argument is today's CO2 density has been increased after particularly the industrial revolution of the late 19th century, right? And after or during the industrial revolution, what happened? With that revolution, developed countries has made big progress, economic progress. So all the developed world from late 19th century all the way through 20th century has made economic progress. And by so doing, developed countries has emitted a lot of CO2s, right? Using fossil-based fuels, petroleum, coal, and so on. And that is the reason why global warming is taking place today. So from these developing countries, they would say, it's you, developed countries, you undermined, you emitted CO2s. That accumulated CO2 generates this world disorder, climate warming. So you have to pay more. You have to double or triple or 10 times more. You have to make your efforts. And now we have a big problem of poverty. Domestically, our priority is poverty eradication. Our priority is economic progress. Climate change, secondly. CO2 reduction, secondly. If you have made during the last 100 years, you did what you wanted. There was no concern about CO2 emission. And you are living with this very high living standard, with lights on, nice living standard, right? Cozy. And now we need to nation building. We have to work harder, eradicating poverty, And you are trying to say CO2 emission no longer? How can we make progress in our country? So all the developing countries adamantly against, not equal share, differentiated. But that was the idea during the 90s. During the last 10, 15 years, not all the developing countries, but emerging or new rising economies like China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and so on, we say BRIC countries, they are quite different from Nauru, Kiribati, Sudan, Eritrea, and Nepal. They should not be treated equally. So, differentiated fine, but let's get rid of CBDL, not conventional CBDL. That's what we are saying. Not traditional CBDL. Not the same CBDL which we are all agreed early 90s. No, no, no. We have to think about CBDL which should be adapted within current world. In other words, China, India, you should collaborate more. We should do your efforts more than before. You should not put in the same group of developing world. No, no. Put in the middle between the developed and developing. So a kind of new group of these growing economies, maybe more responsibilities than before. That's what we are talking about. And we are discussing about still new formulation of new world framework on climate change. And this morning, who was it? Mr. Kusuda? Where is it? Where is he? What did you make? Your presentation. Go ahead. Your presentation was in Japanese, so go ahead in Japanese.
Conference in German, Bonn, for this year's climate change conference COP19
will be taking place in Poland. And before, in preparation of this COP19 in Poland in November, all the participants met together in Bonn in June. And the Kusuda made the presentation what happened during the session. Everybody discussed about what kind of formulation, think about elements, how we think about this new way of sharing, burden sharing. And also the other scientific and more technical matters has been discussed and so on. And we'll be meeting again this COP19 in Poland. And when we met COP17 in Durban, we agreed upon Durban platform, and under which all the members, Chinese, India, USA, everybody agreed upon to formulate new formulation of the new framework in order to tackle the climate change. And that one, we agreed upon formulation should be finished by 2015, 2 years to go. So 2015, we formulate and put it into effect by 2020, so that it will take effect. But this sharing burden, how every member state agrees upon, is very difficult. And we'll be having very difficult time from now on, 1 year, 2 years time, in order to arrive at what kind of Kyoto Protocol system, which has been installed during the 90s, that cannot be accepted. If that will be accepted, no need that Japan appealed. Kyoto Protocol no longer. New framework is necessary. If Kyoto Protocol was as valid as before, USA will come back. Okay, we joined. Parliaments didn't agree, but today we persuaded, so we can join you. China, we can join you. And India, we can join you. Then Kyoto Protocol will be not revived, but will be more robust, mechanism. But USA never came back. China and India, they don't want. Numerical figure, not possible. That's the reason why we propose new framework. Therefore, new framework has to take the different structure than Kyoto Protocol. How? Please study yourself and Google it, and maybe we'll have another session to discuss in detail. But this one is very, very important, and the Japanese diplomacy-wise, I think everybody has this one. And this is what Japan has been endeavoring during the last several years, and still we are going on this, basically this one. And this you can see, technology innovation and technology transfer, and finance. We think these three pillars are the major challenges of the world in order to tackle climate change. In other words, technology innovation is very important. And this morning, most of the students who came this morning are from the science, technology-based departments. So I encourage these students, you continue on your study here in Tsukuba, and you will become the innovator. Try to introduce new technology to reduce as much as CO2 emission as possible, and try to do your research, which will be, what shall I say, in order to capture CO2s and storage, CCS, or small micro. Midorimushi. What do you say midorimushi in English? Yugurena. Yugurena. And try to, what shall I say, make the Yugurena as many or as much Yugurena as possible so that they can consume CO2s. Or, in order to develop a lot of renewable energy. And these are all technologies. And we have been supporting many developing countries. We are supporting Kenyan government in order to construct geothermal power plants, renewable energy. We are also supporting Vietnamese government in order to promote the ecosystem in Vietnam. Eco-label system, which Japan has developed during the last 20 years, has been introduced newly into Vietnam. And Vietnamese government will be soon in putting into implementation of eco-label system, by which the people of the Vietnam will try to economize as much as possible of the usage of fossil petroleum or fuel, or in order to use the better technology which consumes less CO2 and less energy efficiency, and so on. We have done, you can see the backside, for instance, 17.4 billion US dollars wise, we have poured this much amount in order to support as many projects in developing countries, like renewable energy expansion, also the adaptation to introduce the early warning of prevention of the early warning disaster system in order to prevent the disasters and the sufferings as much as possible. We send our experts as well as equipment, early warning system, because we are one of the most, what shall I say, natural disaster-stricken country. So we have developed in the past a lot of know-how and technologies to introduce to developing world where they are facing with these natural calamities and natural disasters, including this sediment disasters and so on. Also, this finance is very important because we were discussing this morning that as much technology as possible should be introduced into developing countries so that developing countries themselves can cope with this climate change and contribute to reduce their CO2 emissions reduction. For that purpose, they need new equipment, they need new system. But in order to introduce new equipment and new system, they need fund, they need money, they need finance. Otherwise, they cannot. So in that sense, this financing will provide finance, Japanese government, but Japanese government cannot finance everybody. So all the developed countries should be good donor in this field, and not only the government, but also private companies. Private companies should join in the mobilization of the funds and the diffusion of the good technological new innovations into developing world. So these are the three big pillars, and Japan has been endeavoring to support developing countries with the ODA, Official Development Assistance, as well as by forming in Asia, why don't we try to build low carbon society. Also in Africa, why don't we try to climate resilient economy? And we have Tokyo International Conference on African Development, and we have been doing a lot of things in order to fight against poverty, in order to fight against the diseases, health problems, education, women empowerment. But in addition, climate change, we are supporting all these things. And also, we are saying not only government, but also local government of Japan. Why don't we try to support developing countries together with the Japanese government? And also the private sector, like Keitanden, which has been endeavoring during the last 5 years to reduce CO2 as much as possible by the Japanese industry. And we have succeeded in achieving the goals. And we are asking to maintain that momentum on and on, so that we can continue what we have done in the past will be carried on to do the same. The world challenge is, even though what we have, our efforts, of these efforts, and all the other developing world's efforts together, we are quite, what shall I say, not certain whether 2 degrees Celsius targets will be met or not. For instance, this climate change, one of the targets is in order to curb increase of world climate, global warming, by 2 degrees Celsius. 2度目標. If the world temperature will be higher, increase of the world temperature is higher than 2 degrees Celsius, that will be causing disastrous effects everywhere in the world. So this 2 degrees Celsius target is one of them. And there are many calculations, but for instance, 660 megatons of CO2 has to be reduced and so on. And in order for that, we have to double or triple our efforts. Otherwise, 2 degrees Celsius target will not be met. For the time being, what's going on and IPCC results, they are reporting that this 2 degrees Celsius target will not be met by the end of this century. Not possible. And there are different scenarios, but the worst case, that will be increased more than 4 degrees Celsius. And that will be really disastrous. Everyday temperature is different. For instance, yesterday and tomorrow, maybe at least 5 degrees change will be taking place. Day to day, 5 degree change. Season to season, more than 10 degrees changes. It's normal. But our world average global temperature, even change of 1 degree Celsius, that's enormous change. We have to take that one into consideration. So world leaders already agreed upon this 2 degrees Celsius target has to be met. But there is no mechanism to achieve it. There's no agreement yet to achieve that one. And I think everyone has to take into consideration that world climate change is so slowly changing. It takes time. This 1 degree difference is what happened during the last 100 years. And the change of climate, these heat waves, the frequency has been increased and so on. It has to be taken based on the statistics during the last 20 years, 30 years, sometimes 100 years, or 1,000 years time. And by so doing, we can show that world climate is degrading. World climate is changing. So even IPCC, they are saying that possibility is very high, extremely high. They're not 100% saying it. But we should take it as a fact of life. And human beings sometimes or often not so, what shall I say, clever, or at least not clever enough to tackle these climate change problems. If seriously taken into consideration, many things has to be changed already today. So world is slowly going into the impasse where everybody will be shouting and crying because our back is on fire. And when that kind of day comes, it will no longer possible to cope with the change and the disaster of what's happening in the world. So we have to become cleverer than today, and all the world leaders need to face seriously to tackle this problem. But anyway, this is one of the problems, and today we have to talk about the other problems of biodiversity. And biodiversity, world environment has to be conserved and maintained. And I have distributed some other, what shall I say, data and material in this PowerPoint. And also the statement by the president of IUCN. And I think everybody has this one. And if you have, for instance here, this IUCN president, can you read this from here loudly?
The International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, is honored to have the opportunity to address the high-level political forum on sustainable development established to give a new momentum to the agenda of sustainable development, which the world must pursue as the only path to a sustainable future.
Thank you. Next paragraph.
This new forum gets underway at a time when the world is still facing two major challenges. The ongoing economic crisis, with millions of people continuing to struggle to find decent jobs, and many governments struggling to provide acceptable standards of living to their people, and the continuing degradation of our physical environment, manifested especially in the loss of biodiversity and the deterioration of the ecosystem services, which are essential for supporting our society and our economies.
Thank you. And the next paragraph.
The high-level political forum should provide the political momentum needed for strengthening the institutional governance of sustainable development, integrating its three dimensions, economic, social, and environmental, in a balanced manner. This is achievable if the political will is there and required means of implementation put in place. We are not starting from scratch, since we can build on the experience of the Commission on Sustainable Development and of the Millennium Development Goals.
Good, thank you. We look at only the one page on the first one. The world is tackling right now the MDGs and SDGs. MDG stands for what? Millennium Development Goals. And Millennium Development Goals were tackled with what kind of targets? Poverty eradication, women empowerment, gender problem, health, diseases problem, education, and environment, and so on, right? And which will be finishing 2014. Therefore, everybody started to discuss about post MDGs. After MDGs, what kind of targets should we formulate? And how we tackle with these problems of poverty, education, environment, women, children, and so on. At the same time, from Rio +20 in Rio de Janeiro last year, we have agreed upon to discuss and formulate SDGs. What is SDGs? Yes?
Sustainable Development Goals.
That's right. Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goals, which means all these goals, whatever it may be, to tackle with global issues, food, water, climate change, all which you named it. Everything has to be sustainable. In other words, poverty eradication is very important. There are still billions of people starving, and we have to help them. In order to eradicate poverty, there are many different ways of doing it. What is important? Everybody will agree, economic progress. Economic growth is basically important. Otherwise, poor people will stay poor. Yes?
Education and nutrition is very
right.
important.
Education, nutrition, all these are very important. But when economic progress takes place, and which will be leading to the attenuation of poverty, what happens? Maybe, very likely, economic degradation to that extent will be happening. As I explained to you, as long as your government may endeavor for economic progress, that will be most of the times back to back with the increase of CO2s. Right? And that will degradating furthermore global warming and climate change. According to some calculation, some scientists is saying, today we are living, everyone on this globe, this economic activities continues, it means we need 1.5 planets. Resources of this globe, resources which we can exploit today, is not good enough for the world people to survive. We need 1.5, another half of the globe is necessary. Resources are scarce. And we have to conserve our nature. Conservation of environment is important. But only conservation of environment, poor people stay poor. We need economic progress, economic activities. We need to consume CO2s, petroleum. Of course, we have to expand the renewable energy. Of course. And what to do with the nuclear power plant in Japan is a big issue. Democratic Party, Prime Minister Noda decided by 2030 our nuclear power plant will become zero. But new administration, new party, new Liberal Democratic Party, Ms. Abe, has not denied by 2030 zero. On the contrary, we will level up the security criteria a lot more strict. Very strict and high standard regulations has to be introduced in order to check each nuclear power plant if that can be resumed its function or not. And when the government can assure the security of each one and local government and local people understanding, then there will be some, or I don't know how many, nuclear power plants will be in operation. We had 54 nuclear power plants before 3/11, and 3/11 damaged 4 of them, and we have 50 nuclear power plants today, but none, zero, no nuclear power plant is functioning today. Up until a few months ago, only 2 were functioning. And next year, I think some will be refunctioning after filtering this new strict regulations. But all these important is our fight against poverty, our fight against all these global issues has to be sustainable. Otherwise, we cannot sustain this globe. So, this president of IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, is clearly saying, this second paragraph, this forum gets underway at a time when the world still faces 2 major challenges. One of the challenges is the ongoing economic crisis, with millions of people continuing to struggle to find decent jobs, and many governments struggling to provide acceptable standards of living to their people. In other words, poverty. How to eradicate poverty. All the governments are struggling. This one big issue. And another one, continuing degradation of our physical environment. Continuing degradation, manifested especially in the loss of biodiversity and deterioration of ecosystem services, which are essential for supporting our societies and our economies. And this high-level political forum should provide a political momentum. Political momentum is important, needed for strengthening the institutional governance for sustainable development, integrating its 3 dimensions, economic, social, and environmental, in a balanced manner. This is achievable if the political will is there and required means of implementation put in place. In other words, what? Without political will, it is not achievable. This is very important statement. That's why I picked up. Just spoken, delivered 2 weeks ago. And we need really political will. All the leaders of the world has to agree upon the new agreement on what? MDGs, post-MDGs, SDGs, and climate change, and all the other global issues. Otherwise, the world is not as good as today and will get worse and worse and worse. So that is what we are trying, everyone, but the word is, there is no word government, which is government, which is governing all the peoples of the world, all the nations of the world. Today's word is only all the sovereign states, according to United Nations 193 or 194 sovereign states, and cooperation among these countries are taking place under United Nations, under UNFCCC, under convention, or under specialized agencies of the United Nations. But United Nations doesn't have the power to govern all the countries. If we have the world central government, which will be governing all the countries here present in this classroom, that would be a lot more easier to do whatever. But since the world is composition of all the sovereign states situation is different. Some are poorer, some are richer, some are more less advantaged in certain fields than others, and so on and so. So take, for instance, climate change, for instance. It is very difficult to come to a conclusion to arrive at new framework. Even though in Kyoto we have arrived at one formulation, one mechanism of Kyoto Protocol, which has been taking place in a good way, but nonetheless, world has been changed during the last 10 years, and we have to take into consideration and we have to arrive at formulation of the new framework. But the road is very thorny and very difficult, and thorny process of overcoming a lot of difficulties, and in order to arrive at every state party will be agreeing on a new framework in order to tackle climate change. We started at 3, and 4:30 is the end of this session, right?
Until 5.
Until 5?
Right.
Including debates and
Really?
discussion.
2 hours? I thought 90 minutes. Until 5.
Up to you.
Okay, good. So we have 35 minutes. So I need your questions.
Yeah.
Yes? You introduced already?
Yeah, I already introduced.
You're from?
I'm from Indonesia.
Oh, Indonesia. Okay.
Thank you for the change.
Yes.
And about the new framework. In my understanding, in my knowledge, the most affected factors in global warming is deforestation. And deforestation is the most affected. That's why in the new framework it is said that technology innovation will be developed. But how about the deforestation solving problems? Is it as important as technology information?
Yes. Forestation very important point. Indonesia is very rich in forestry sources. And problem is deforestation. And this is another big issue or a big problem. And you have seen this, what we have done, the worldwide, the second page, you can see this mitigation adaptation. Mitigation is in order to reduce the CO2 emission. There are many ways. Renewable energy, sources, expansion. If we help the renewable energy, what shall I say, construction and so on, solar panel construction or geothermal power plant, that will mitigate reduction of CO2s. Adaptation is in order to face the flooding, try to preempt the river flooding or in order to introduce early warning system, these are what we have in supporting adaptation. But within mitigation, forestry expansion, because trees and leaves that will absorb CO2s. Therefore, expansion of forestry and preventing deforestation that will help to reduce CO2 emissions. So from this point of view, forestation, Japan has been supporting a lot of countries to Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, and African countries in order to cope with this deforestation. And we have the mechanism of REDD+. And this is reduction of bad effects or preventing the deforestation things. And this we have been supporting, and we have a very good relationship with Indonesia. And many JICA experts have been dispatched to Indonesia, and together with the Indonesian officials, they are coping with these forestry problems. And we are also trying to, what shall I say, promote the governments like Brazil and other governments try to reduce deforestation. Deforestation happens from different reasons. And when governments promote development of land and for the more, what shall I say, buildings, and the development takes place in the sense of felling down the trees and reducing the forestation, and by so doing, economic expansion programs sometimes taking place. So we are promoting not to reduce or not to damage the forestry resources and try to continue or promote your economic progress. And at the same time, these forestry or trees cut in order to export the logs for manufacturing furnitures and so on. So it has to be done properly and legally, and not illegal logging, trying to reduce or eradicate illegal loggings, and trying to, what shall I say, ask the government to introduce the system of certification. And of course, you can grow trees on business base in order to become exporter of trees for the manufacturers of the furnitures. That is not prohibited. So you grow trees and you fell it and you sell. That's possible. But it has to be well controlled, and it has to be in good way so that the deforestation will not be happening and the degradation of the forestry will not be happening. So these are the good, what shall I say, field of cooperation in the world. What else? No other question? Anybody who has not raised your hands, he has read one paragraph, but he's raised his hand, so I accept his question.
I'll give question to students first, maybe I'll ask later. If there's no question.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Sun. I'm a teaching staff of the EDL Tsukuba. As you have mentioned about the nuclear power plant issues, I have a question related to this nuclear power plant issues. And in EDL program, we have the EDL debate, which students discuss global environmental issues. And in the first semester, we discussed about the nuclear power plant issues. As you have mentioned, in Japan, nuclear power plant has become very sensitive issues. The country is going to make new regulation for those kind of plant. But on the other hand, we have heard that Japanese government has decided to export the nuclear power technology and already make some arrangements to sell Japanese nuclear power plant to Vietnam, to Mongolia, and to some other countries. So as an ambassador, I would like to have your opinion on this, both sides.
Vietnam and what did you say?
Mongolia also.
I don't think so. Maybe discussion may be taking place, but we have agreed upon maybe with Turkey. Turkish government is thinking of expanding or the construction of a nuclear power plant. And when Prime Minister visited Turkey, I think we have agreed upon we will start, the construction of a nuclear power plant project in Turkey. And we are still going on the discussions with the other governments which are planning to construct some more or new nuclear power plants. The nuclear reactor problems is very sensitive and very difficult problem to think about. Sometimes it needs the very ethical point of view or discussions. That is one of the not reasons, but anyway, that's for instance, as I explained to you, Democratic Party decided to abolish all the nuclear power plants by 2030, and new Abe administration in a way changed that policy. And as to the exportation or introduction of the Japanese, what can I say, technology of nuclear power plants, we are trying to introduce to maybe as many governments as possible. I think the government's policy is taking place with the public opinion behind. And if the Japanese people are all against this exploitation of nuclear power for energy, electricity generation, if not, the government cannot resume or start or change the Democratic Party's policy. I understand the government has judged that it is not the unanimity of opinion of the Japanese people. And there are always, every weekends or Friday, in front of the Prime Minister's office, the manifestation taking place against the nuclear power plants. As you have explained or discussed in your class, there are pros and cons. And the problem is the final, what shall I say, treatment of the radioactivity of the used fuels and so on. We human beings have not found out the perfect treatment eternally. That is one of the problems I understand why there are pros and cons. And when the accident happens, like Fukushima, disastrous effects, and still things have not been, what shall I say, completely solved. And still those people affected directly cannot go back to their homes and so on. And the leaking radioactive what shall I say, water is still leaking and so on. So I think the one is we have to work out how to face with the possible disaster or accidents. And first of all, we have to build up all the necessary regulations so that this accident will not happen. The way how Tokyo Electric Power Company has been doing was so sloppily done. And they were not really serious enough. And if they had been so, conscientiously strict, that what kind of disaster didn't take place. in that sense, all the necessary, based on that one, Prime Minister will be making the final decision. But there are many countries who are really thinking the necessity of introduction of nuclear power plants. Otherwise, their economy cannot thrive. So this is a kind of necessity for each government to have the further economic progress to attenuate sort of poverty or further economic growth. These leaders are determined to have new nuclear power plants. And how these people judge, that's another thing. So when it comes back to poverty eradication is indispensably important thing. But for that one, economic progress, is it really necessary or not? That's another argument. We can, continue on and on. Yes.
So, isn't population control a better method of eradicating poverty?
Population problem is also very, very important. And the word population, as I explained to you, today already we need 1.5 times planet in order to continue to live on. If the population reduces in half, maybe one globe would be necessary, right? But the population problem is very difficult. China introduced one family, one child policy. And this is causing some social problem, whether that was wise or not. And they are reconsidering whether that is wise way or not. Malaysian government is continue on, and they are encouraging Malaysians to have more children. So I go to Malaysia very often, and I work at the University Technology Malaysia and Malaysia-Japan International Institute of Technology. Whenever I go, new lady worker is saying, "Oh, I'm pregnant." Every 3 months, new one. "Oh, congratulations, happy you, lucky you." But they are happy, and the government is very happy, because among ASEAN countries, ASEAN's many countries are growing, taking good economic progress. Malaysian weak point is small population. Malaysian population today is 29 million people. Indonesia, how many?
190 million.
115? 200. Yes. Right. You are double of Japan. Yeah? Over 200 million next door to Malaysia. Only 27, 29 million. So Indonesia is a big country with 200 million. Malaysia and Indonesia, brother countries or sister countries. They speak Malay language. They speak Indonesian language. When I say they speak Malay language, Indonesians say, no, we are not speaking Malay language. We are speaking Indonesian language, which is different.
Yeah.
But from my point of view, they speak the same language. It's something like Hokkaidoites is saying Okinawaites. Okinawa people, Hokkaido people, they speak the same language? Yes. They speak the same language, but it's different dialects. So they are the same language, basically the same Islam and brother country, sister country, but they are rivalries very much. We are the better. Yeah? Malaysian government I'm saying economic progress is good. And look his policy. Mahathir, Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, he started to say in 1981, Malaysia should learn from Japan and Korea for its economic restoration, economic progress. So they dispatched 500 students to Japan from 1982, and to this Tsukuba, some, maybe, I hope. Are you from Lucas policy? No, I see. Under Lucas policy, every year 400, 500 Malaysian students come to Japanese universities. They mainly come to study technology. Because Mahathir, Prime Minister, thought in order to build their country, technology, having good engineers is indispensable. And he's correct. And therefore, they are dispatching a lot of Malaysian students to Japanese university, and they have to learn Japanese, and they come to join the university, and they learn technology, and they go back home. And they are contributing to the nation building of Malaysia. And why did I start talking about this? I have forgotten the reason why. Huh? A population, that's right. So, whenever I speak, Malaysia, after Lucas policy, you have succeeded in developing your country. And you are already today over 10,000, 10,000 is, yes, 1만ドルね. Over 10,000 USD, American dollar, per capita income. And we say 14,000, maybe they can come into the developed country. So Malaysia is almost 60%, 70% already developed country, no longer developing country. Singapore has already grown, graduated, right? And Malaysia soon. But Malaysian economy's weak point is population is small. So I'm saying to Malaysian people, no, you have ASEAN 10 countries. That is the community, economic community is being built. So don't think that 29 is too small. You have over 300 million people behind you. But Malaysian government is not thinking always that way. They need more people. That's why they are promoting all the Malaysian people having more children, right? I cannot tell them don't have any child. So population problem is difficult, but worldwide population already over many, 5 billion people and 60 billion, 70 billion and so on. And this is a big problem. So we have to think about from the sustainable point of view, sustainability point of view, when the population grows larger, then we have to think about how to, maintain them, and so on. Yes?
Shall I introduce myself?
Yes, please. Thank you.
My name is Du and I come from China. And now I'm in the first year of the master course. I have a background of automation, so now my research is basically about to achieve the automatic control of the sewage treatment plant.
Which treatment?
Sewage treatment.
Yes.
Sewage treatment plant. And so now my question is, what do you think about the water problem or water pollution in developing countries? And do you have some comments or suggestions? Thank you.
The pollution problem we have discussed a lot this morning, and we had the 2 Chinese representatives or students, Miss Ma and Miss Wan. They are Chinese students in my class, And we had a good discussion, not only with them, but all the others. And one of the point is the Japan, during the 70s and 80s, with the economic progress of Japan, we polluted air, we polluted river, we polluted everywhere. So Japan was inhabitable. Japanese people could not live in Japan. In other words, school children go to school, they cannot play in the playground outside. They have to stay inside the classroom, they have to wear masks, and when they go out, go and efforts to formulate new framework so that Canada can join. Good. So thank you very much.